You're watching Eyewitness Newsmakers.
We are going to talk about a bill that most of us share, the Department of Water and Power, which would like to see our water rates increase by about $5 on the average household bill in January. All of you and others on the council have said that not a penny shall be raised in addition until there is a ratepayer advocate. The city approved a ratepayer advocate in March. There was going to be one, I think the last we all talked, by September. There is not one.
I had a committee meeting yesterday, Energy and Environment, the head of the commission that is going through hiring the ratepayer advocate, calling through the applications, has told us that they should be ready to present to us in January. They had over 40 responses to the job, and they're calling it now and cutting down the list. But
I think our commitment is we're not going to increase any rates until that ratepayer advocate's in there, take that position, so we can understand, the community can understand, instead of putting the rate increase, and then, by the way, here's the ratepayer advocate. We need to put that position in place before any rates are increased.
But haven't even some community groups that you wouldn't hear from saying this $5 water rate increase,
yeah, they have,
because it's to cover by federal law requirement and state law requirement for clean water, and since the rates went down because we had to have a rainfall, that $5 may not be...
But I think we made a commitment to the public that we would have an unfettered third-party analysis by this ratepayer advocate. We are right on the verge of having that person. The process has moved along, even though folks may not necessarily recognize that, and they will be ready to move it in January.
I'm very excited to have a ratepayer advocate in place. We know that there are rates that are going to increase in the future, but I'd like to see this department and the ratepayer advocate focus on our bills, not just our rates. Because when we can reduce our electricity use, reduce our water consumption, we can have lower bills even as we know the cost of these things go up. The bottom line, what I care most about is what do I pay on my bill, not always just what the rate is.
So is the message to the DWP that rate increase that they'd like to see next month going to happen?
We could have somebody in place by then. I'm optimistic that we will.
But I will say I will not vote for any increase until the ratepayer advocate advises and informs the public. I will not vote for any increase until we have that information.
We have another topic we need to get to, which could take the rest of this program, although perhaps if we can move to a few others, we can. This is the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles. And much has been said about it lately. Councilman Zine, I'd like to start with you, since you chair the committee that audits departments, and get your opinion on what has been reported as exorbitant spending, over $300,000 for travel, budget, gifts in a year.
Incentives for employees. Outrageous conduct.
And over $1 million payout to the former head of this board.
$1.2 million. It's outrageous. That department was run their own rules. They didn't follow the rules of logic, common sense, and reasonableness. Extravagant spending at expensive restaurants. It didn't go to the community. Section 8 housing is for poor people. The money's supposed to go to help the poor people in the Section 8 housing developers.
Is it to build and maintain housing, or to provide the housing? And
all of it. To maintain, to manage, to make sure it's done properly. But
now, is this mostly federal money, correct?
This is 100% federal money, and the only time that we even see this level of government is when we confirm commissioners. After that, they are an autonomous level of government accountable only to the federal government. And that has to be changed. We have to make sure that these outrageous things where the neediest people in our communities are being overseen by somebody who just got a $1.2 million payoff, that never happens again.
So the way to change that is the oversight ordinance that I introduced over a year ago. The city attorney has finally drafted it. We should be reviewing it in January. That will be our point of intervention as a city council, so that we can begin to review the budgets. We can inject ourselves in this process. At the present time, HACLA and the relationship that HACLA, or the Housing Authority, has with the City of Los Angeles is defined by a cooperation agreement. So we don't have the authority other than to ask the commissioners to act. The mayor appoints 7 of the commissioners, and we either confirm or deny those appointments.
Then at least up to this point, who should have been minding the store? The federal government?
No one was minding the store, and the federal government has a role and responsibility. And what frightens me, if it's happening in Los Angeles and happening in Philadelphia, is it happening across America? Maybe that's why we have this huge deficit in the federal budget, because $1 billion to a department, and what they're supposed to do, they're not doing. But it was like a private corporation where you want to go out in a limousine. We've got the limousine. You have credit cards. You can have an expense up to $15,000 for over 100 employees. It was outrageous conduct, and it was a waste of taxpayers' dollars. How much we can recoup, we don't know. But next Tuesday, in City Council, we're going to have the acting general manager come before us and put the hard questions and see what happens. They have a new president of the commission who's very aggressive in trying to change it. And I asked him, I said, have you removed the credit cards? No. Well, maybe the first point, remove those credit cards and say you can't spend anything until it's justified.
Well, wasn't some of the question, though, that there was double dipping going on, that in addition to the credit cards, there were cash advances for
outrageous
conventions
activity. Yes.
and meals and travel, but then were charged again on credit cards as well?
And they never had to report that to anybody who was elected. That is part of the problem, and I agree with Ms. Perry. I mean, we need both federal legislative changes and local ones to give us some power, people who are elected by the people, to be able to see that every single week.
But since it is federal money, has anyone vetted this question whether or not you do have any power over it?
Well, we've been told we don't, and we have to be invited in.
That's why the oversight ordinance is so important, to be able to allow us a legal way to inject ourselves into this process, so we do, on a going forward basis, have the opportunity to review their budget, review their expenditures, and to monitor their activities.
Finally, the outgoing chair of who has received this payment or is receiving this over $1 million, when one looks at the contract that he had, it seems as though that was set in stone. Who negotiates these contracts?
Well, that was done by the commission with attorneys. The fact is, he's claiming retaliation. I don't know how you can be retaliated if you're the general manager. Our controller, Wendy Gruhl, is doing an extensive audit. Our district attorney is doing an extensive investigation. People will be answering to this particular situation, this abuse and waste of taxpayers' money.
All right, we're going to have to press on with another commercial, but we'll have more with the leaders of Los Angeles City Council when Eyewitness Newsmakers continues.